Wednesday podcast. We're back here with Jake.
Hello.
Hey, Jake.
It was excellent.
Well deserved. Missed you for 2 weeks. So Simon stood in. He was excellent at asking me really complicated questions.
Good. Putting you on the spot.
A little bit, yeah. But I think we got some good podcasts out of it. One of them went on quite a long time, awesome. 40 minutes. We're going to try and keep one. Today's a bit shorter.
Okay.
So we want to talk about bikes again.
As per.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things caught our eye this last couple of weeks. So we've missed one, haven't we?
Yeah.
The new BMC RoadMachine.
Yeah.
New ENVE Fray. New Look 785 Who's, which you've got a review on the channel. We're not going to talk about that very much. We're just going to put it in perspective. No, that's all. Fox have got some new forks out.
Yeah, the new grip dampers. Yeah, so we've got obviously new grip dampers and new kind of budget stuff from RockShox, which is interesting.
Yeah, we've got Decathlon Van Rysel RCR, sold out in 2 hours.
Yeah.
£9,000 road bike, sold out in 2 hours.
Who saw that coming?
Who saw that coming? And we also have a chat about the whole confusion about mid-tier group sets and high-tier frames and all that sort of stuff. And yeah. Right, BMC RoadMachine.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably a bit more of an overarching chat than just BMC RoadMachine for me.
It is, and I'm going to start this because endurance bikes.
Yeah,
like I am going to die on this hill. That endurance bikes should be made for endurance activities.
Because what we've been seeing recently with like the BMC RoadMachine, ENVE Fray, and a lot of these endurance branded bikes is that actually they are coming out as all road bikes. So It's branded as an endurance bike, but it has 40mm tyre clearance, and in all the marketing, because gravel is all the hoo-ha and it's quite fun to ride and you don't have cars and all that whatnot, it's becoming a very blended category between endurance, gravel, all-road.
Yeah, and it's got so confusing. I don't know how we've managed to confuse this endurance name, because conjure up the image in your mind about what does endurance mean for you, like long days in the saddle, like really big epic adventures, right? That's what the word endurance brings up to me. And for that I want a bike which is stable, but also to be fast as well, because I want to get through that epic 300-mile trip and everything else. And so what I don't want is a bike that puts me into a very upright position where I'm putting most of my body weight onto my bum, that is slow and sluggish. That's for me it's great. Don't get me wrong, it's a great bike. Those bikes are great for some people, but they're comfort bikes in my mind. Yeah,
because obviously we've got your endurance bike, the Look 765,
of which BMC RoadMachine, coming back to that, was like its newest competitor.
Yeah, for a very long time.
Like long wheelbase, it's for ultimate stability in a straight line, and a slack head angle for like just rolling over those potholed roads.
Yeah,
endurance.
Yeah.
Big wide tyre clearance.
Well, but it's what, you've got 35mm tyre clearance on that? Maybe a little bit less?
Yeah, I think it's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, whereas I think probably the reason I think we're seeing these differences is because people like to have one bike, and gravel is the thing at the minute. It is the probably fastest growing market, and if people want a new bike and they think, oh, well, actually I don't want to buy a gravel bike and a road bike and all this extra stuff, it's probably a much easier sell as ENVE, as BMC, as whoever else has joined the fray, Cervelo Caledonia or all that sort of stuff. It's a much, much easier sell to say, you can have this one brilliant bike for all this money and you don't have to buy another one because it can do everything.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I think it's an important category, the all-road. In fact, the Time ADHX we've talked about on this channel before, they thought it was a gravel bike. I was like, no, guys, this isn't a gravel bike. It hasn't got the tyre clearance, it hasn't got slack head angles for it. It is a fantastic all-road, competes really well with all of those. But, and if you want a road bike that you can occasionally put some gravel tyres onto and take it off-road, then this is a great bike, but it's definitely not an all-out gravel bike.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on, isn't there?
Yep.
And my God, it's confusing talking about it, let alone trying to make a buying decision from it.
I think probably what it needs is, I think the bikes themselves are perfectly fine. I think I'd be very happy to own a BMC RoadMachine or an ENVE Fray or whatever. I mean, I don't have $5,500 to drop on an ENVE frame, but that's besides the point.
I don't know many people do.
No, but I think probably what it needs is not for the bikes to change, but for the categorization to change in terms of having a better sort of system for understanding, not lumping it in as an endurance bike because traditionally that's what a RoadMachine is. I think we need to have, for consumers, for people like trying to sell one even, is if someone rings up and says, oh, shall I get this bike? It's like, well, what are you doing on it? And it's,
So like we can pin through the geometry and we can get a pretty good idea going through the geometry, seeing what the rear centre, the front centre, the bottom bracket height is, what the reach and the stack are just a couple of examples, head tube angle, etc. We get a pretty good idea what that bike is trying to achieve. I mean, that's quite a lot of knowledge though. And most of the time you just go, right, I want to go and ride my bike with the club, and then I want to potentially go into the forest. Let's take it to Grisdale with the kids where it's a nice safe off the road, but I can go cycling. One bike does it all. That's an all-road bike.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I think the whole industry needs to really try and get a handle on this because they're all starting to look quite similar to the untrained eye as well, aren't they? There was a time, I guess, when Trek Demande, Specialized Roubaix, you could kind of tell it was a endurance or a sportive bike, with coin another term that they came up with, was because it had like all these little vibration control widgets. And I am quite glad that trend is dying.
Finally.
Like the various
ISO speeds and
like
head shocks, and they even Specialized even had the tuned rear seat stay at one point, didn't they?
Oh yeah,
all that bollocks.
Elastomers and stuff with this. Yeah, I'm really glad that trend is dying, and now we're just seeing tire clearance and good tires that will cope with a variety of stuff, and then just good geometry. I think now the challenge is going to be unpicking the geometry and making sense of all of this. It is a mess. I mean, the ENVE Fray, just to have a look at this bike, it is a weird looking bike actually.
Yeah.
When you sort of look at it at first glance, it's got a very, very tall head tube.
It actually looks quite a lot like that Vitus Venon we've got downstairs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's an extra large we've got down there.
Yeah. But
it's, I mean, they've got this completely slammed in this picture. And that saddle to bar drop is still pretty high.
Yeah.
And just in first thoughts is like, well, that's a gravel bike, but the head angle's too tight.
Yeah.
So, and the wheelbase is too short for a gravel bike. So what is it? And it's got massive tire clearance. And
So I mean, for you, what would you, if you're looking at an endurance bike coming out, what do you want to be categorized under endurance bike? What do you want to be categorized under all road? And what marks the difference between the two categories?
For me, endurance bike should be geared at people doing really epic adventures. The cycle tours, the back roads, the sort of the roads that aren't very well looked after, that are going to be rough, bumpy roads. Because that'd be on them for hours and hours and days and days.
But is that not all roads for an all-road bike?
Yeah, but potentially, I think it's the duration that makes a difference. Because you can sit on something for a long time, but you also want to have it to be efficient and stable. And you're going to be tired. When those days are so long that you just got tired legs and tired brain and like, and you're just being bounced around. You just want your bike to just feel like the most stable, secure thing. A bit like driving a BMW on an Autobahn. You can just sit back. Ultimate luxury. It's got your back.
As long as it's not rear-wheel drive.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that was a bad example. Compared to like a little sports car where you've got to be like alert all the time and you're being shaken.
Yeah.
I just want my endurance bike to be like Grand Tour car, straight line.
Yeah,
let's just go.
So that's your
cruise through it.
That's your ultimate. Sit on it all day. It is a road bike for roads, and then the all road is.
Yeah, I think the all road should cope with some cornering.
Yeah,
and being a bit lively.
Yeah,
because when you've got a bit more energy in you, that you want to get out of the saddle and give it some beans on a climb, and maybe throw it into a corner every now and then, but you're still going to be on some rough, potty roads. That's why these come with the tighter head angles, etc. That's where they come in, I think. But how do we categorise that? All road seems to be the best way of putting it. Interesting crossover category, I suppose.
And then to kind of close off this segment, for the average rider, would you rather have an all-road bike or an endurance bike?
If I was only riding on the road, I would rather have a long, slack endurance road bike.
Yeah.
If I wanted to do some mild off-roading, then I think an all-road might be good. But then I have to say, well, have a gravel bike.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes in, doesn't it?
And have all the right gravel bike gearing and all the right gravel bike handlebars and, and have, proper tyre clearance, not just for the actual width, but some actual mud clearance and stuff as well. So I don't know. I feel like this all-road trying to achieve too much.
Yeah.
In one bike. It might suit some people, don't get me wrong, but yeah. And then of course we've got the 785, which just kind of confused things a little bit, because I was expecting this to be a lightweight climbing bike, 73 degrees, a normal road geometry, like a giant TCR or whatever, Trek Emonda, competes in that category, and it isn't.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at the geometry chart and was like, oh, it's a bit weird. Ridden it, lovely bike, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not in the lightweight climbing race category.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be.
No.
Because now we have lightweight aero bikes.
Yes.
So this obviously didn't need to be a cheaper blade.
No.
In the same ways that the Emonda is a cheaper Madone or a TCR is a cheaper Propel. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So that got really confusing because in that video, I said, why would you choose a TCR over a Propel?
Yeah. Because there's hardly any difference in weight nowadays. Yeah. There's stiffness is, still stiff. Like, it's still a race bike. But for the average rider or the average racer, you're going to get much, much more benefit from the aerodynamics of a Propel, of a Madone, of a, aero's everything these days. Like,
it is way more than weight. And it got me thinking, because someone in the comment section of the 785 review were like, oh, that's too heavy for me. It's not for me. I'm like, well, but they don't want all the aero shapes of an aero bike. And it's like, that's weird. Do you know, that's weird because if you're so concerned about the weight of your bike for ultimate performance, then you should be more concerned about aero.
Yeah, because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what makes the most difference. Yeah. I mean, you see it, if weight was everything, on mountain stages, Jonas Vingegaard would ride the Cervelo R5, but he doesn't.
No.
He rides the S5 with shallow wheels because even though it's heavier, it's faster.
Yeah. So when you think about that makes perfect sense. It's just they call this not a race bike, they call it a performance bike, designed to perform well in all places. Yeah. And I think more and more bikes are coming out with this sort of look in that idea. So it makes us wonder, that podcast we did when we discussed what 40% of the Trek range we would cut.
Yeah.
And I went back and looked at some of the archives, and back in January, there was rumours of a new Emonda.
Yes.
It actually looks a bit like a Madone.
Yes, it's the picture of Theo Gegenhardt with a very skinny bike with the seat stay cut out, isn't it? Yeah.
So could that picture have been, are they going to ditch one? Because it's the same thing. Why would you choose one or the other?
I have heard the rumour mill is saying that.
I've heard some rumours.
I have heard, I got a phone call from John Burke actually the other day. He rang me up and he said, Jake, listen, we've been enough the.
You might turn it on the Mapdec podcast.
Yeah, he said, listen, just tell the boys. Yeah, no, I've been hearing, bit of chat here and there, and people are saying that the Emonda is going to go, and it's going to be replaced with a SL8 style one bike does it all that will be called the Madone. Apparently, allegedly,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
cool. So will the Domane become an all-road bike?
I still think that needs to go in the bin.
Yeah,
I really hope that goes in the bin.
Again, don't they, with the Domane, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just upset so many people with saying.
I know.
It's, I think that's the way it goes. And if you were to walk into a Giant shop right now and be shown a Propel and a TCR, and you were a sales assistant trying to say, which one you should choose?
It's a no-brainer, isn't it, for the Propel?
Yeah, you'd choose the Propel. The TCR doesn't seem to have a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not any lighter. It's doesn't, the geometry is the same. It's like
well, it is a little bit lighter, but not enough to offset the aerodynamic difference.
No, not at all. So yeah, I think on reflection, I think what Look are doing, they've always been quite a progressive company, but what they're doing, not just in terms of their range, they've got this proper endurance and the proper in between bike and a proper race bike, but also how they work all their group set designations as well. Like, you can only buy the blade with Ultegra and above.
Yeah.
You can't buy a 105 not blade because it's a race bike.
Yeah.
And the 105 is never intended to be a race group set. It's the Ultegra and Dura, so they're race group sets. And so when you buy the 785 as a fully built bike, Ultegra is as high as it goes, but then you've got the 105 and Rival, etc. And that makes perfect sense to me. But a lot of the things we're seeing, BMC and ENVE, they're putting absolutely top tier SRAM Red Dura Ace group sets on mid tier frames.
Well, I don't think ENVE are doing that. I think you can. Okay. I think you can probably only buy the most possible expensive thing from ENVE, and that's what you should expect.
Yeah, okay. Well, the picture they got in their marketing here is a Fray with a SRAM Red group set, which seems completely bonkers.
Yeah.
As to why you put a state of the art race group set on an all-road frame, which you're going to potentially give a bit of a batter into.
Well, it is a 5.5 gram frame, isn't it? So you're probably, if you're buying one of those, you probably got the spare cash lying around to lump SAM groups.
These group sets were made to be fit for purpose. They were meant for, for racing. So they are lightweight, but they're also more fragile.
Yeah.
There is that whole thing, isn't it? The same with Dura-Race, etc. It's all lightweight, but it's not designed to be the durable used every day.
No.
It's designed for race day occasions. So why would you put top tier group sets on like those sorts of...
Because it looks nice.
It
looks nice. I mean, I think BMC they've not done a terrible job of delineating between the kind of the different specs of the frame. Yeah. So they have just the RoadMachine and then the RoadMachine 01, like they do with the Team Machine and the Team Machine 01. That's their like high modulus version of the frame. And they have on just the regular RoadMachine that goes up to Ultegra, and that stops at about £6,000, something like that.
Yeah.
6,000 Swiss francs, whatever the conversion rate is, I'm not too sure. But and then the 01 starts at Ultegra and goes from £7,500 up, and it stops at 13,000 Swiss francs with a fully integrated handlebars and Dura-Ace. And so in between there, you've got quite a very sort of like clear hierarchy of this is the cheaper bike, this is the cheaper group set, this is the more expensive bike with the more expensive group set. But it does then blur the lines between, well, if I want a high-end bike, what am I buying? Because if you then look at the RoadMachine, the Team Machine, sorry, the race bike, that's then also 12, 13, 14,000 pounds. And if you're thinking, I really, really want the best bike, it's tricky to make that decision, isn't it?
Yeah, it comes back to that thing, actually, when you sort of sit in the cafe culture and sitting around and say, oh, nice bike. Guarantee you could hang a Dura-Race group set onto the nastiest of Dolan frames and someone will say, oh, nice bike.
Yeah, because it's got deep section wheels and Dura-Ace on it. It looks nice from the outside. Yeah. But again, I don't know if we've covered it on the podcast before. We've said in many videos in the past, the tier of group set on your bike does not make a difference to how it rides.
Frame, wheels, group set. In fact, frame,
tyres.
Tyres.
I would rather have a bike with a nice set of tyres and 105 group set than some really horrible, tube only, bottom of the barrel Continentals. I wouldn't run that with a Dura-Ace group set, but I'd run some nice tyres with 105 every day of the week.
You're looking at the BMC stuff as well. They're often making compromises on the wheels to make sure you get that branded, the next brand up of group set. Oh my God, what a mess. Thank God for this podcast like this to help people through the fog. I want to move on to forks.
Yeah.
Because interesting stuff going on in mountain bike forks at the moment. So there's not the sort of category that gets updated that much.
No, it's a pretty slow and steady. You see a lot of iterative changes, don't you?
And this is still an iterative change. You're not changing the world here. But Fox came out and they've come out with new dampers, the Grip X2, the Grip X, etc. So the Grip damper has been around at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it's a good solid damper. So the Grip X2, what could they do to make it any better? It's already legendary in its reliability and its sort of tunability, but it did always have a problem, especially with lighter riders and heavier riders, is that the compression damping was never quite enough. A lot of people I know that are very light would just run it open the entire time. Yeah, compression damping for them was just like, it's the blue knob, what the hell? And sometimes we would have to retune it and we'd go through the diagrams and we'd change the shim stacks to tune it, which is weird because if you think about the rear shocks that they do, the X2, etc., has so many clicks of engagement that anyone, no matter how heavy you are, so you don't need to tune that.
It's about 144 different combinations of clicks you can have, isn't it?
You really don't need to open it up and tune it. You've got nearly everything you need in an X2 to get it to work. So this is what I was most interested in, because obviously Fox are getting demand from lighter riders and heavier riders, people at the other end of the bell curve, so to speak, to say, your product doesn't perform for me. Yeah. And that end of the bell curve is getting bigger. It's a bigger part of the population that are saying, your foot doesn't perform for me. I just wind it with compression open. So what they've done on this is actually, the technical side a bit aside, they've made the valving bigger. Essentially, they made the diameter of the damper bigger, made the valving bigger so that compression damping can be opened up. Now, technical bits aside, I am just applauding the fact that they are listening to the more extremes of our lighter and heavier riders and saying, I need a fork that works for me. and it does seem to be working.
Yeah, well, I think it's obviously becoming more prevalent as well with stuff like e-bikes and things like that, because obviously in the last 5 years, that's been a massive change in the market, is e-bikes. And if you've got an extra 10, 15, 20 kilos of bike on the other end of it, you're going to have to make some sort of change to the suspension. Because, I mean, the amount of e-bikes you see coming in with like a 32 mil stanchion fork on is terrifying, isn't
it?
And
they just open the compression damper and just plow through their travel.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. So hopefully, if this is kind of flattening out, as you say, either end of the curve, not just having that for the mid-range rider of, your 80 odd kilos and mid-travel bike, it's because obviously this is getting rolled out to every step of the Fox fork, isn't it? It goes from 32 up to 40 and on the high end.
At the moment, this is only on the 36 and 38.
No, that's the it's the SL is for the 32 and 34 step cast.
Yeah.
X is for between 34 and 38, I believe.
Yeah, and the X2 is a 38 upwards. Yeah. So it's I'm glad to see that they start to make these changes across the board. And then, of course, RockShox just came out with a whole bunch of new sort of not budget, because they're not the lowest of the low. They're sort of their mid-range, good value propositions, and they've done something similar. They've improved the air spring as well, again trying to make it more responsive for lighter riders and heavier riders. Obviously listening to that e-bike market that wants it to not just dive through their travel straight away, but also for lighter riders saying, just doesn't do anything for me. It's like, all my mates tell me I should adjust it. It doesn't make any.
And I think probably obviously now we're getting more and more customization for the end customer. I think what will be important is education on how to use it, because if you're a novice rider or a casual rider, or my side on the road bikes, if it didn't work here, I probably wouldn't have much of a clue on how to adjust suspension. And so I think it's just when you then have all of that control over your suspension, you need some sort of good guidelines to say, if you weigh this much, if you ride this type of bike, if you ride this type of terrain, this is how you should start your adjustments, and then you can start to fettle with it from there. Because if you just leave someone to their own devices with more and more and more adjustments, you've got a much higher likelihood that you can mess it up. Whereas if you just got one dial for compression and the rebound hidden away, you leave it on factory settings and you just flick it between the compression for whether you're going uphill or downhill. You can't really get it that horrendously wrong. Whereas if you try and fettle with it with, however many, you've got 144 clicks on a shock. If you start messing with that and it becomes a pogo stick, you're probably in for a pretty piss poor ride, aren't you?
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. Very, very true. Okay, one last subject, very quickly. Decathlon, Van Rysel RCR, sold out in 2 hours. There we go. We got no idea how much that actually meant. It could have been 5 bikes, could have been 500, who knows? But they listed it on their website, and next thing you know, it's taken down. So, the internet, the media is reporting it must be a resounding success because they sold out. If anyone's got any idea of their sales figures, please let us know. It'd be interesting to know actually how many units that was actually in theory, or was it just listed and then there's a problem, they took it down again? I don't know. But, I mean, good on them. I mean, we've often said, we got called out when we did that first podcast because we felt like we were like taking them down, not like criticising the actual bike. I'm pretty sure that they've got engineers that can go to a factory and quality check it. Always my concern is, with all these high-end bikes, the expectations of someone that has spent £8,000-9,000 on a bike is that they want it to work perfectly. And that's got little to do with the actual frame as it leaves the factory, but a lot to do with the mechanic that, one, checked all those surfaces and installed everything properly, tuned everything properly, and that's much more to do with the mechanic than it is the actual factory making the frame. So that concern still sticks. I hope they get hold of it. I really hope that Decathlon are investing in training their staff, and those are perfect. That's what my hope is.
Hopefully so.
But that is also my major concern. It's not the qualities that leave the factory. We haven't seen one. My concern is that Decathlon don't have the reputation for, setting the expectations.
Accuracy.
I know it's cheap, but it's still expensive.
Well, £9,000 is not cheap, is it?
And you are going to want the brakes not to rub, or the bottom bracket not to squeak, or your cables not to rattle, and your seat post not to slip. And when you do, you're going to take it back to a Decathlon shop,
and they aren't going to be able to fix it.
I doubt it. Not in their current. Last time I was in Decathlon shop, that wouldn't fill me with a lot of confidence.
No.
So, but improve, get better, train your staff. That's what I'd say. I'm done. Are you?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Nice one.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Oh, next week, you're going solo.
Am I?
If you want to.
Oh, hell yeah.
Let's do it. Tune in next week to see what Jake comes up with on the podcast. Get your comments down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take it easy. See you on the next one.
See you later.